A world on the brink. On the surface, 2025 seems like a year of transition. Global markets are stabilizing, technology is advancing rapidly, and the memory of the pandemic is slowly fading. But behind the headlines and diplomatic handshakes, another reality is forming quietly, deliberately, and with increasing urgency. Geopolitical pressure points are heating up, and some have already reached a critical temperature. Classified intelligence from major world powers leaked through whistleblowers, cyber breaches, and intercepted communications suggests that war is not merely a distant threat. In several key regions, it is a real possibility within the next 12 months. While large-scale wars between nation-states have become rare in the 21st century, the patterns of escalation remain unchanged. Territorial disputes, ethnic divisions, strategic resources, and proxy involvement from larger powers. In many cases, the warning signs are clear military exercises near disputed borders, sudden increases in defense spending, cyber sabotage, and the withdrawal of international observers. This video does not rely on speculation. It draws from defense briefings, leaked intelligence assessments, satellite imagery, and the accounts of diplomatic insiders. From Asia to Eastern Europe, from Latin America to the Horn of Africa, we explore 7 countries that, based on current indicators, may be on the edge of armed conflict before 2026. What follows is not meant to incite fear. It is meant to inform. In a world shaped increasingly by disinformation and distraction, understanding where tensions are mounting is a form of preparation. Let us begin with a region where a single misstep could spark a global confrontation. 1. Taiwan. The Strait of Strategic Calculation. Taiwan is arguably the most dangerous flashpoint in the world today. The island functions as an independent state, with its own government, economy, and military. Beijing continues to assert that Taiwan is a breakaway province bound for reunification by force, if necessary. Since early 2024, tensions have escalated beyond rhetoric. Satellite images leaked from Japanese defense analysts show unprecedented levels of Chinese amphibious drills conducted near the eastern coast of Fujian, province barely 180 kilometers from Taiwan. The Chinese Navy, or Plan, has also increased patrols across the median line in the Taiwan Strait, a boundary long considered an unofficial buffer. According to intelligence briefings released by the Taiwanese Ministry of National Defense, the number of aerial incursions by Chinese fighter jets reached 1,720 incidents in 2024 alone, a 45% increase from the previous year. Simultaneously, the United States and Japan have intensified joint naval drills with Taiwanese forces, signaling a readiness to deter aggression. China's leadership, facing economic slowdown and internal dissent, may view a move on Taiwan as a unifying nationalist cause. Leaked memos from U.S. Indo-Pacific Command in Guam highlight a potential gray zone strategy: attacks, targeted sanctions, and a partial maritime blockade, rather than a full-scale invasion, at least initially. For Taiwan, conscription terms have been extended. Civil defense drills are now monthly, and semiconductor industries vital to the global tech supply chain are being fortified. If conflict breaks out here, it will not remain regional. The Taiwan Strait sits at the intersection of global trade, military alliances, and great power rivalry. Any escalation could drag multiple nations into a war whose consequences would reshape the 21st century. 2. Serbia. The Balkans. Reawakened. The Balkan Peninsula has long been Europe's geopolitical powder keg, and once again the fuse may be burning. The core of current tensions lies between Serbia and Kosovo, 2 states with deep-rooted historical animosities. While Kosovo declared independence in 2008, Serbia continues to reject its legitimacy, backed by Russia and China. In 2025, diplomatic efforts appeared to be faltering. European Union-led negotiations have stalled, and leaked EU internal communications point to rising frustration with Serbia's intransigence. The most concerning revelations came from a NATO field intelligence report in March 2025, which detailed unmarked Serbian paramilitary units operating in northern Kosovan area, predominantly populated by ethnic Serbs. Analysts fear that Belgrade may be using these groups to destabilize Kosovo from within, while avoiding direct confrontation, further deepening the crisis. Satellite surveillance identified the movement of Serbian heavy armored tanks and artillery within 30 kilometers of the Kosovo border, under the guise of military exercises. Simultaneously, Kosovo has fully activated its security force and begun deploying drones over contested zones. The international dimension adds gravity. Russia, still locked in conflict in Ukraine, has increased arms shipments to Serbia, while the U.S. has quietly reinforced its military presence at Camp Bonsteel, Kosovo. Though a full-scale war is not guaranteed, the probability of a sudden escalation triggered by an ethnic clash, political assassination, or border incidents rising. The Balkans have erupted before under similar conditions. If diplomacy continues to erode, history may repeat itself with devastating speed. 3. Azerbaijan. The shadow of the Caucasus and the South Caucasus, the fragile peace between Azerbaijan and Armenia hangs by a thread. After the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh War, a Russian-brokered ceasefire established temporary calm. But the underlying causes of conflict, territorial disputes, ethnic grievances, and geopolitical rivalries remain unresolved. Now, in 2025, intelligence leaks point to the possibility of renewed war. It's not just over Nagorno-Karabakh, but potentially involving the southern Armenian province of Sunak. This area is strategic. It connects Armenia to Iran and blocks Azerbaijan's overland link to its Nakhchivan exclave. According to a confidential briefing from OSCE monitors, Azerbaijan has significantly increased military deployments along its southern border. Drone footage leaked by a private defense analytics group revealed new artillery batteries, missile defense systems, and forward operating bases within striking distance of Sunak. Turkey, Azerbaijan's close ally, has also expanded its military cooperation with Baku, supplying advanced drones, field intelligence systems, and special forces training. Meanwhile, Armenia's traditional ally, Russia, appears distracted, its forces overstretched in Ukraine, and its peacekeeping presence in Nagorno-Karabakh diminished. Iran has entered the fray diplomatically and militarily. In late 2024, Iranian IRGC units conducted joint patrols with Armenian border forces near Migri, and Iranian officials have declared that any redrawing of the regional map is unacceptable. Regional stability is also under pressure from within. Both Armenia and Azerbaijan are dealing with nationalist protests, economic hardship, and the growing influence of foreign mercenary groups. Should Azerbaijan decide to forcibly open a land corridor through southern Armenia, even a limited campaign could ignite a regional war involving Iran, Turkey, and Russia. With the Caucasus serving as a corridor between Europe, the Middle East, and Central Asia, any conflict here could spill far beyond its mountainous borders. 4. Ethiopia. Unresolved wounds, rising flames. The Tigray War may have officially ended with a ceasefire in late 2022, but peace in Ethiopia remains fragile and largely superficial. As 2025 unfolds, new signs of internal fracture are emerging, this time from the Amhara region, one of the country's most populous and politically significant states. Leaked United Nations situation reports reveal that more than 20,000 civilians have fled their homes in the past 6 months due to renewed clashes between Amhara militias and federal forces. Unlike previous conflicts, this unrest is not secessionist in nature. It is a power struggle rooted in the distribution of authority, access to land, and federal identity. The Ethiopian National Defense Force has begun redeploying artillery and infantry brigades toward the northern highlands. Satellite imagery from a multinational humanitarian monitoring group confirms the construction of new forward bases outside the city of Gondor. According to intercepted communications released by whistleblowers within the African Union, there are concerns that Eritrea, Ethiopia's volatile neighbor, may re-enter the fray, either by supporting dissident groups or exploiting the chaos for territorial gain. Meanwhile, weapons are flowing in from across the porous Sudanese and Somali borders, some reportedly of Chinese and Emirati origin. International observers warn that Ethiopia could slip back into civil war, but this time without the geographic clarity that defined the Tigray conflict. Instead, multiple ethnic factions, regional militias, federal forces may enter a decentralized and prolonged confrontation. For a nation of over 120 million people, and a critical hub for the African Union, a breakdown in internal order would have continental repercussions. Ethiopia is not just fighting to preserve peace, is struggling to remain a unified state. 5. South China Sea. The fog of maritime provocation, the South China Sea remains one of the most contested and militarized maritime zones in the world. At the heart of the dispute lies China's sweeping claim over nearly 90% of the sea, outlined by its so-called nine-dash line. But in 2025, the frequency and severity of confrontations have entered dangerous new territory. Leaked ASEAN military reports indicate that there were more than 40 documented maritime incidents between Chinese forces and those of Vietnam and the Philippines during the first quarter of this year alone. These range from sonar harassment and water cannon attacks to deliberate near collisions with fishing and Coast Guard vessels. China's latest move involves the construction of a third military-grade airstrip on Mischief Reef, feature claimed by the Philippines but currently occupied by Chinese forces. Satellite imagery shows reinforced runways, radar installations, and anti-aircraft batteries, all of which indicate long-term strategic intent. In response, Vietnam has more than doubled its maritime defense budget since 2023. The Philippine Coast Guard, backed by U.S. advisors, now escorts civilian vessels near contested shoals, and joint military exercises with American forces have expanded in both frequency and scale. The United States, under the framework of the 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty with the Philippines, has reiterated that any armed attack on Philippine vessels in the South China Sea would trigger a military response. This statement, echoed by Japanese and Australian officials, significantly raises the stakes. Though few analysts predict a full-scale naval war, the probability of a lethal miscalculation is high. The South China Sea is increasingly defined not by formal declarations, but by dangerous encounters at sea. In a region so densely packed with military forces, the margin for error is vanishing. 6. North Korea's strategic unpredictability. North Korea remains one of the world's most opaque and volatile regimes. While the global community has grown used to its provocations, missile launches, nuclear threats, cyber attacks, the events of 2025 have introduced a new level of concern among defense analysts. The most alarming development stems from Pyongyang's adoption of a tactical nuclear doctrine. As outlined in a leaked South Korean intelligence assessment, according to the report, the regime has formally integrated battlefield nuclear weapons into its conventional war planning, signaling a lowered threshold for nuclear use. Satellite analysis from commercial intelligence firms reveals the rapid expansion of underground missile silos near Mount Pyekto, as well as mobile launcher deployments disguised as civilian freight. In early 2025, North Korea conducted its 8th missile test in just 5 months, including short-range hypersonic weapons capable of reaching Seoul in under 5 minutes. South Korea, in response, has resumed large-scale joint exercises with U.S. forces. Civil defense drills in Seoul and Busan have been reintroduced for the first time since 2017. The United States Indo-Pacific Command has reportedly shifted Guam's alert level to DEFCON 3, a measure indicating increased readiness for potential military operations. There are also unconfirmed reports that North Korean military units have been repositioned near the DMZ. Though it remains unclear whether this is posturing or preparation, the risk of intentional war remains low. However, the chance of accidental escalation, triggered by misread signals, misfired projectiles, or cyber interference, is growing. In such a high-tension environment, even a minor error could spiral into a catastrophic chain of retaliation. 7. Venezuela conflict brewing in the jungle border. In Latin America, Venezuela is once again drawing the world's attention, not for its internal crisis, but for a looming international dispute. The heart of the conflict is the Essequibo region, a vast, resource-rich territory currently administered by Guyana, but claimed by Venezuela. In late early Narcís, Maduro's government held a controversial national referendum, in which Venezuelans overwhelmingly, though under questionable conditions, supported the annexation of Essequibo. International observers condemned the process, but the government has since increased military deployments near the Guyanese border. Satellite imagery analyzed by independent security firms confirms the movement of armored units, mobile radar stations, and helicopter squadrons into Venezuela's eastern provinces. Meanwhile, Guyana, supported diplomatically by the United States and Brazil, has moved troops and surveillance assets closer to the frontier. The situation is further complicated by the discovery of significant oil reserves off the coast of Essequibo, U.S. energy company ExxonMobil, in partnership with Guyana, has begun operations under naval protection, according to leaked diplomatic cables. Washington has quietly warned Caracas that any attack on offshore installations would be treated as a red line. Adding another layer to the crisis, unverified reports suggest that Russian military advisors have arrived in Venezuela, reportedly providing training in asymmetric warfare and electronic disruption. Brazil has responded by reinforcing its northern command, signaling that it will defend Guyanese sovereignty if necessary. Although a full-scale invasion remains unlikely, the risk of a limited incursion, or skirmish, possibly, triggered by a contested oil platform or border patrol is rising. The Essequibo dispute may seem local, but its geopolitical implications are not. In a region striving for stability, Venezuela's ambitions could ignite a broader confrontation. The edge of an era. As we conclude this global assessment, a sobering reality emerges. War in the modern age is no longer always preceded by declarations or grand mobilizations. Instead, it often begins with silent buildups, blurred red lines, and signals misunderstood or ignored. From the Pacific Islands of Taiwan to the turbulent borders of Venezuela, the intelligence paints a consistent picture. Tensions are accelerating, and the structures designed to prevent war diplomacy. Multilateral organizations, treaties are showing signs of fatigue or even irrelevance. In each of the 7 regions we've explored, distinct patterns repeat. Military activity disguised as training, ethnic or territorial disputes left unresolved for decades. Great powers intervening in the shadows, fueling rivalries with weapons, advisors, or economic leverage. And populations living under the growing shadow of uncertainty. These conflicts may not erupt simultaneously. Some may cool temporarily, others may remain frozen. But the potential for miscalculation has never been greater, and the consequences, in a hyper-connected world, may ripple far beyond the front lines. Consider this. In a single decade, the world has experienced a pandemic, economic shockwaves, cyber warfare, and a major land war in Europe. The idea that peace is the default setting of international affairs no longer holds. What does this mean for the rest of us? Awareness is no longer optional. These developments do not merely belong to generals or diplomats, they will affect global trade, migration patterns, energy security, and even the stability of democratic systems. As the world nears the end of 2025, we stand at a historical threshold. Whether these 7 tensions erupt into wars or are pulled back from the brink will depend on decisions being made new, war rooms, palaces, parliaments, and diplomatic back channels. The fault lines are visible. The question is whether we are listening.